I want to talk about, okay, Bleach ReBirth of Souls. Now, I was very interested in this game. Obviously, I'm a big Bleach shill. And the fact that I was the one telling people, hey, people were saying, "Oh, it's an anime arena fighter. Pack it up." I was the one saying, "Hey, hold the phone. Hold the phone. The developer has a history with making competent 3D action games. Let's see what the game's actually like," because there was very little gameplay. They ended up releasing a kind of gameplay overview trailer as well as 3 character trailers, which I'm going to be honest are edited way too quickly and didn't give me a very good idea of. I had to rewatch them a couple times to kind of figure out what they're doing. And then once I figured out what they're doing, I was like, what the fuck? You should tell people about this. Don't be like Kunitsugami and not fucking let people know what kind of game this is. Because guess what, baby? Bleach ReBirth of Souls is a spiritual successor to Dissidia. I win. Taigen wins. It's crazy. It's like someone was making a game specifically for me. They said, let's make a Bleach game and let's make it like Dissidia. So I've explained kind of how Dissidia works before, right? I would consider Dissidia to be like the gold standard of anime arena fighters. I haven't played like the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storms or the things like that, but in terms of like actual solid, really interesting gameplay, I think Dissidia is like the gold standard. I think it is really hard to match, and it's frustrating that nothing has ever tried to emulate what it did, because it's such a cool, interesting system that creates so much natural, cool moments. And finally, someone's trying to do it again. So it's not like, from what I can tell, it's not like the exact same system. It's not just like a complete rip-off. They're doing a couple things differently. There is also a lot of reworks to it, and you know, it's their own interpretation of it that I think a lot of those reinterpretations have to do with making it more themed to Bleach. So essentially, if I had to distill Dissidia's combat and what's unique about it, it's that you use one kind of attack to lower an enemy's one of your enemy's resources, while building up the same resource for yourself, and then you spend that resource with a different type of attack to do damage to your opponent's actual health. That's basically how Dissidia combat works. And, you know, funny enough, it transfers really well to a Bleach game. They've essentially done that here, except where in Dissidia it was bravery that could then be spent to deal damage to their health. Here it is spiritual pressure, which builds up a resource that it's called like the EX meter, I think. And then you can spend your EX meter to, you deal damage to their spiritual pressure to build up your EX meter. And then you spend the EX meter to deal attacks that take out your opponent's stocks, essentially. They call them konpaku, which is just soul in Japanese. And it's kind of like stocks, sort of, in Smash. So you build up I think 2 bars of EX, and your attack will take out 2 stocks of their soul thing. So that's cool. The reason I say it's like Bleach flavored is like that's kind of how Bleach works. If you haven't seen the anime or read the manga or anything, characters in Bleach have a spiritual pressure, which is basically just how strong they are, because everyone's like soul spirit people. And if you are not at least like around someone's strength or higher, you literally can't hurt them. Like Ichigo, when he fights Kenpachi for the first time, he like smashes his sword full force against Kenpachi's chest, and it just like boom. It's like he hit him with a pool noodle or something. He literally cannot cut his skin. He can't do anything to him because his spiritual pressure is just nowhere near Kenpachi's level, even when Kenpachi is like super suppressed, because he like has specific like ways of he basically handicaps himself. I love Kenpachi. He's like super suppressed and all that, and Ichigo still can't fight him. So a lot of Ichigo's fights, especially in the early parts of Bleach, are actually like wars of attrition, where he's just trying to wear down the opponent and outlast them, and he's always on the back foot, till they like kind of spend their wear them down to the point where he can kind of like power up and tap into like his fucking anime protagonist comeback factor, and then overpower them and win. That's how a lot of like Bleach fights go. And so the idea of like, okay, you use what they call spiritual pressure attacks, which are like bravery attacks from Dissidia, I guess, to attack their spirit pressure. And then that builds up your EX bar, and then use your EX attacks, like the HP attacks from Dissidia, to deal damage to their actual health. There's a couple others. So I'm not sure like what happens when you completely run out of spirit pressure in Dissidia. If you dropped someone to 0 bravery and then hit them, if you reduce them below 0, you would inflict, it was called a bravery break, and you would get a huge bonus to your own bravery. And then it would become essentially, their bravery would start like ticking up super fast all the way to the regular like base threshold that they start at. And during that time they couldn't be damaged. And I think any damage you did to them while they were in that recovery period would like always be like a critical. So you would gain like even more bravery for it. It's kind of like a win more, lose more thing going on. So I'm not sure like if something similar happens, like you're going to get a big boost to your EX gauge or something like that. But the basic premise is super cool to me. It also looks like they're only covering the Soul Society, which I think is funny because remember how I said, yeah, in the trailer, the only gameplay you really see that you can make out is Ichigo versus Byakuya, which is the last thing that happens in Soul Society, like the last fight. And then in this, again, in the gameplay overview, they have Ichigo versus Byakuya, so I have no idea like what the... This is like doing the Z Saga, or like the Dragon Ball Z, a Dragon Ball Z game like this that goes up to Frieza, and then just having the Frieza fight be all the examples. Which, like, yeah, I mean, I guess it's been around for a long time. People, if you're interested in this game, you probably know that that's what happens in the story. That they kind of build up to Byakuya and Ichigo having a showdown. It's just kind of funny to me that that's what they would do. Not like against Renji or someone like that. Like, oh, just an Ichigo rival character. So yeah, it looks like they're only going up to Soul Society. Also because Uryu is in his Soul Society outfit specifically. He's in that design. There seems to be some kind of a comeback factor. I think it might happen when you're low on like stocks, or maybe low on spirit pressure. I'm not sure. For Ichigo, it looks like he gets he gets like Bankai. I think it puts him into his Bankai, which is very, very appropriate. That's kind of how it works. Or it gives him the Hollow Mask, which would also be like, yep, that's his comeback. That would actually be more appropriate for a comeback transformation for Ichigo, because that's like the whole thing is whenever he's getting weaker, he like has to, it's like the temptation to give in to the like animalistic power of the Hollow inside and all that, you know, anime shit that I love. It actually genuinely looks very cool. I am more interested in it now. I'm more interested in it now than when even the trailer came out, just because the gameplay is so cool. You know, what they haven't showed off is movement. They haven't really showed off any movement mechanics. One of the core things that I think of when I think of Dissidia is how crazy movement is in that game. You've got, like, wall running everywhere, like on literally everything. There's a dedicated button essentially it's the triangle button. You go up to a wall and a little arrow appears on it, and you just hit the triangle button and you just snap to the wall. And there's like all sorts of aerial stuff that you can do. Directional air dodging, directional air dashing. You can get 8-way, like omnidirectional air dashes. You can have, there's like rails that you can grind on, like Sonic the Hedgehog, and dismount at any time, and like you can stall your air momentum and like guard by like blocking and stuff like that, or doing attacks. Different attacks will affect your momentum in different ways. And like once you get into it, it's such a cool core part of the gameplay, and it really helps because it is such a very neutral focused game. I would say very much based around like baiting out options that are punishable, and then hitting them with an HP attack or something like that. And having a really fleshed out movement system like that is it makes it's a huge part of the fun for me. And they haven't showed off too much of that. I don't. It's funny because a Bleach game is also perfect for that, because these Bleach motherfuckers are flying around and teleporting and zip zap zooping everywhere across the screen, across entire cities, and everyone's like as fast as light and all that shit. And so I would imagine there would be some kind of like, I definitely saw there was some kind of flash step ability. I don't know what that is, if that's like a real mobility thing, or if that's more of like, is that just like a dodge mechanic or something? I've got no clue. I would hope that there would be some kind of neat movement stuff, because to me that's a fun part of Bleach's visuals, and also would fit very well into this style of game. I kind of at this point just want to see the actual full match of gameplay from the developers. Don't give it to IGN, okay? I feel like at this point I don't want to see IGN gameplay. They have this incredible talent for making games look bad. Don't give it to them. Show off some internal dev matches. Let me see how the game's actually like meant to be played. And hopefully it will become even more interesting to me. But yeah, actually very, very encouraging from my perspective. Kind of crazy that they seem to be making this specifically for me.